Trump is the best thing that can happen to American science. I think here's why. He is hopefully cutting through the corruption, particularly at the level of the NIH, but in general, at any situation where the government funds science. Government-funded science has failed. And the reason I say that is for two. One, we've seen what happened during the pandemic. I don't want to go into too much detail here, but what the NIH did under Fauci and just what happened there was totalitarian nightmare. It was fatalist, slippery slope into a very, very bad situation. I think kudos to this country to be able to rebound from that. Europe, for example, is not able to rebound, so it shows the strength of the United States system. And the reason it's so bad is because when you have the government dashing out so much money to science, then science will fall prey to Goodhart's law, where everything that is measured is becoming a target, and that puts the second argument in front center, which is the productivity of science is just abysmal. And the solution is that the research that happens should be happening in private companies, that academia should, the main and only job of academia should be to teach. And for that part of research, which is important, the exploratory part, the moonshot type stuff, I'm not against that, but that should be funded by private money. We need to relieve private companies from taxes and then have them choose the kinds of projects. And we would have, as we had in the past, we would have benefactors, we would have rich people, we would have angel type investors or funders who are willing to give money to all kinds of science projects. But most importantly, the actual research that matters, which is the research where we solve problems and we create new problems and solve problems and so on and so forth. That's the kind of research that is best done by private companies, in particular companies that have a profit motive, such as SpaceX, for example. Now, the profit motive might be a very lofty goal, such as going to Mars, but in order to go to Mars, they have to make a profit. They have to be able to finance that endeavor. So my point here is Trump is the best thing that can happen to American science because American science is in decline, because of corruption, because of fiat involvement in the scientific process. So breaking that is the best thing that can happen to science. The problem with science is not the scientist, it is science. So I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to offer the solution, which is, again, private money, kind of a Silicon Valley version of science. It's not even on podcast. It's September 18, 2025. This is Krim Delco. For the year, we're up 10.5%. The market is up 12%. We're underperforming by 1.5%. So let's talk about the main statement of this episode, which is Trump is the best thing that can happen to American science. And here's why. Trump, as I see him, is a system that is trying to get rid of corruption at the federal level in the United States. This is my definition of what I mean with Trump. So I don't mean the person himself, I mean the system. And the reason I think they're trying to get rid of corruption is, for example, they're trying to dismantle the Department of Education, they're fighting the NIH, and hopefully, and I'm not privy of all the detailed information, but I would think that this whole connection between government-funded science can be disrupted. And here's why that's a bad thing. If you have the government giving money to scientists, no matter how you slice it and dice it, you will fall prey to Goodhart's law, which is that whatever is being measured becomes the target. Bureaucrats giving money to scientists it's just that's human nature. I don't think you don't even need to prove that. It's just how it is. And if you play this game long enough, that's how it's going to end up. So I'm not saying every bureaucrat and every university and every research project is, falling prey to that, but I would say a big bulk of all the projects. So we're doing science for the sake of science. We're doing science for the sake of writing grants. We're writing grants for the sake of receiving money to build small little empires in universities. Our universities are corrupt to the gazoo, particularly the ones which pretend to be private. I'm just walking now on the Stanford University campus. Stanford, unfortunately, is one of the main institutions. As much as I respect the institution, as much as I respect most of their faculty, as an institution, it has failed because it is falling prey to several forms of corruption. I don't want to go into details here, but it's just even Stanford, which has created so much value for society, even Stanford is falling prey to corruption. And if there wasn't this much corruption, I think it would be even much more valuable for themselves and for society. So what's the corruption? Again, it's the grant system that works a little bit like this. So if you're a professor at a university, you write a proposal for money. So you write to a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C., or maybe your state capital, and then they decide whether you get money for a research project. This system, in principle, you could say, if there was a wise cabal of the smartest people in the world, Platonic rulers in Washington, D.C., Laplacian demons who know exactly how the world works and what it needs to know as a next step to get better. In a world like that, you could have a system where they actually give money to scientists, but the real world isn't like that. The real world is driven by mediocrity and bureaucrats and egotism and political influence. And what we get is a science which is not decipherable. Nobody knows most of the science, can't read it. It's very difficult to understand. And by the way, I'm not even talking about, I don't know, East Asian gender studies or something like that, some Mickey Mouse degree that is only there to promote the people who actually study that stuff. I'm talking about physics, engineering, hardcore STEM sciences. Even there, most of the science, unfortunately, doesn't yield any real progress. Sometimes maybe it can be classified as speculative science, which is fine. I'm not against that. I think, like I said in the prelude, there is a room for speculative science, which means science that doesn't have direct tangible results, products and services to be produced on, things like that. But again, that type of science, if we had a system, and now I'm jumping here, but if we get rid of the government involvement in science, and we had a system where private individuals are relieved of paying taxes, and then take that money and invest it the way they want, I am guaranteeing you that you will see a lot more private involvement in what we call science, and that science will be a lot more productive. So the reason the government involvement doesn't work, it's like any other government involvement, it's human nature, but more importantly, it's also the measurement problem. Like, even if you had good, even if there wasn't all that human stuff, the incentive misalignment, even if humans wanted to do the best possible work they can, this cabal of savants in Washington, D.C., would not know what kind of knowledge is worth pursuing when they write the grant check. They wouldn't know. So it's much better to leave it to the marketplace, the wisdom of the crowd, and have science grow like this. Imagine a thought experiment. You have East and West United States divided at the Intercontinental Divide, somewhere around Aspen, Colorado. So you divide two countries. The West is totally run by, there's no government involvement in science whatsoever. It's actually illegal. No elected government official can write checks to any research or academic institution. And on the East, we have the status quo, whatever we have today. The Harvards and Dartmouths of this world, they function the way they function. They pretend to be private. They get funded by the government. They suck a lot of government money. The better ones like Harvard get more money, and the ones that are not so good at sucking money or get less money. Now play this for 50 years. I guarantee you the system in the West would come out something like I described, where we would have institutions, lots of very useful institutions, teaching the next generation in developing knowledge, in developing science, in understanding what science means, and all of that stuff, basically teaching. We would have private businesses and individuals financing either people at the university level, or we would have private research institutions, maybe even for-profit research institutions that actually generate knowledge that can be IP'd and sold. We would probably have some sort of angel network of rich people who like to give money to, I don't know, people like David Deutsch and those types of people who like to think really outside of the box, and then every now and then come up with something like like a new algorithm for quantum computers or something that is maybe, a few generations ahead of current science lifespans. So versus the East would just continue the way it is. I think the productivity of the West would be much higher. The wealth creation would be much higher. The way we, using David Deutsch's definition of wealth, the all possible physical transformation. So the more knowledge you have, the more physical transformations you have. So knowledge is actually the same as wealth. It's just two sides of the same coin. You need freedom. You need wealth. So there's this magic triangle of wealth, knowledge, and freedom. And I think Trump as a system, again, not the person, the system of Trump with the people and the mindset around his movement, the MAGA movement, is much more conducive to this type of environment than the status quo. Thank you.